Welcome to Raw and Refined, the Gentleman's Hour, where we're going to have engaging conversation with middle-aged black men about what's going on. We welcome you to listen, like, comment, and subscribe with the hope that we will encourage others to join us for future conversations. We always like to start off with a toast. And with that toast, it's because we're gentlemen, and we like to do it raw and refined.
Let's get this thing going, and of course, we'll start off with a toast. What are you cats sipping on this morning?
Go ahead, GK. I know you got your regular out there.
Yeah, well, exactly. This is a coffee Sunday or a coffee day, and so I've got my fills,
Yes.
and it's filtered
The soul.
soul.
Yes, the soul beverage. Yes, I just remember it was the soul beverage, right?
Yeah,
Filtered
Exactly.
soul.
And Phil's is not paying me for this.
Right.
Yes.
right.
I paid Phil's,
Right.
There you go.
but this is my coffee for the day.
I don't know if you caught the text I sent a couple weeks back, Greg, but after we had recorded the last one, when I was doing the editing, I went back and I noticed that about the tea you were drinking, you had said the same thing. You were like, I'm not going to say the name. They're not paying me. But I text you the name because I was like, you were doing I want to say it was the ginger turmeric.
Yeah.
Was it? And
Yep.
it's the same brand that we drink. I do a couple of different ones from that same brand. But when I saw that one, when I was going to do a restock, I saw the ginger turmeric, and I was like, all right, I know which one. I know what Greg's using there. But yeah, there's some excellent teas, and we
Yes.
switched to them a while ago because they don't have any microplastic in their packaging. A lot of the tea makers still have microplastics in their tea bags. And so that was the primary reason we switched to that particular brand. So when I saw it, I was like, okay, I know which ones Greg's using now. So since I'm talking, I'm gonna go ahead and say that I got today for myself in my Yeti, I do every blue moon. I do something that with a sweetener, artificial sweetener. I try to stay away from those for the most part. But it's this little generic brand at Jewel's called Ice. Well, they sell them at a couple of different places. They're called Ice, and they're on the long, skinny tube. It's
I know.
kind of like a sparkling beverage. Yeah, I got the black cherry today. I do those every blue moon, but not too often because I don't want to do too much of the artificial sweeteners.
That's all right, brother. That's all right. I'm rocking just a iced mocha latte. Today I've got an ultra pasteurized, fat-free, non-dairy product in it, and monk fruit sugar as a sweetener for it.
Yeah, the monk fruit sweet extract as the sweeteners. Yeah,
and doing that today. So
yeah, the monk fruit has a pretty good taste to it. It doesn't change up the flavor of stuff too much, and it's not artificial, so that's a good one.
Right. So good deal.
So today we're going way back down memory lane for us again. We've gone down memory lane before, but today we're going back. This one is a nostalgia trip for us. We're going back to the 80s because for us, those are those important formative years for us, right? All three of us came out of school in the same year. We're in the same class. So that means for us, the 80s, the first 80 through 82 would have been the end of elementary school or grammar school, depending on what part of the country you're in and what you call it. So that was 6th, 7th, and 8th grades for us. And then 82 through 86 were our high school years. You've heard us talk about the Great Proviso East High School before. And then the end of the 80s, 86 through 89, was our college years. We're all undergraduates at that time at our respective colleges. So the 80s, a shared cultural experience for us in a number of ways, but especially because we're locked into the same timeline together. So when someone says the 80s, what's the very first image that pops into your mind?
I would probably say Cosby, like the Cosby Show. Like that's one of the first things that comes to mind for me. Like just the impact of, you said Cosby, different world, kind of saying the same kind of thing to me. Yeah, that's what comes to mind instantly.
I think that first thing that may pop is probably music. Thinking about just how many different genres we were really getting into it in the 80s. We
Yeah.
weren't just siloed into R&B, hip hop. That was the I'll say the growth of house music for us, especially in the Chicagoland area. But we were also getting into the pop and the rock and all of
Yep.
that was going on in the 80s as well.
Mhm.
So I think first thing I think about, I'm thinking about just the different genres of music that, used to listen to and kind of groove with as well.
That encompasses so much, and you're so right. The 80s was just, the music was, there's so much that comes to mind, and we'll talk about a lot of it as we go along, but that entire span, I mean, the beginnings of hip hop, house music, like you said, and truthfully, we were MTV kids, right?
Yep.
And so all of the music that went along with that is, for us in Chicagoland, a station that comes to mind is B96, right?
Yep.
We were all into B96, and they were playing the music, they were playing the pop music that was in the music videos and all of that we were, of course, sucked into at that time. I think for me, the first thing that comes to mind when I think 80s is basketball, because it was just such a big chunk of my life at that time. Right? Playing basketball, watching basketball, Michael Jordan and the Bulls, and how explosive culturally that was. Also, along with that, the Bears, 85, and everything that went along with that.
Right.
But I think basketball is probably the first thing that popped into my mind. Like I said, that for me, high school basketball, and then when we were at Illinois, the Flying Illini was during that time. But overriding all of that was Michael Jordan coming to the Bulls, and that, and his impact on the 80s and culture and all of that.
Yeah.
Truth.
Well, the fascinating thing to me is, as we talk about the 80s, it really is thinking about how I guess it seems like an obvious point, but the way the 80s started versus the way they ended culturally were so different, right? Like I'm thinking, just thinking about the music, right? You're talking about Rapper's Delight, just thinking hip hop, like Rapper's Delight 79, then and you're thinking about Zap and More Bounce to the Ounce, right? And by the end, it's Soul to Soul 89 and like the range
De
in
La
between
Soul.
that and De La Soul. Like it's funny, like you're coming off the era of disco and like to whatever winds up being the thing by 89. It's just so radically different, musically.
That's true.
Yeah, we could talk
From
easily
good
for an
times
hour.
to
Right.
like literally from good times to
A different
Cosby
world.
Show.
Do a different world, right?
Yeah.
right. Wow. That's true. It was a definitely a defining time for us. So I know we'll be speaking more about that, but the 80s was a time of growth. This is the decade that truly helped shape who we became or who we are because of our growth and all that was going on at that time. I mean, you're absolutely right, bro. I mean, I was thinking about 1980 was when I started at Faulkner. So that was the year I was moved ahead. So that changed my whole perspective come 1980. That's to everything, man. Education and all kind of stuff. Black folks and what black folks were doing and everything. So I came out of Forest Park, Lily, not black type stuff. And
Well, it's a good thing you got over there and they browned you up.
They did, brother.
Toasted you up a little bit before we got you at Proviso East.
Right. But I came to East with that preppy mentality though, because I remember I was wearing a polo shirt, button-down shirt, and a tie. And the dude in 8th grade was looking more professional type deal. And y'all mugs, of course, had on some, maybe some polos or some shirts and some jeans and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, hey, I gotta have to change up this attire thing. So yeah, t-shirts and all that other stuff, but more than what I was rocking, less than what we call dress down for what I was coming with type deal. So yeah.
Yeah, I had no fashion sense. I had no money.
I ain't had no money either.
I have whatever the moms bought on sale. that fit, because my other issue was growth at that time. It was happening too fast. I was growing out of everything.
It's a time, as I've shared, that for me, especially, time I'm leaving suburbia of Chicago, going into South Shore area of Chicago, and entered into Faulkner School, which you guys have heard me talk about, private school for black folks on the south side of Chicago, run by a black Principal Johnson, female at the time. And that was the first time I saw black teachers. And I had a black math male teacher and a black English teacher who were brother and sister from Jamaica, the Grants.
Yachties.
But it was also a time where it changed my whole trajectory when it came to education, because I went there. We must have finished early and forced at trying to check out the new school at Faulkner. I think there was maybe a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks left of their school. So they invited me to see what the class was like, sixth grade. That's what I was supposed to be going into. So I got to be in the classes with them, kind of see what they were doing, this, that, and the other. All comes and finish. And the principal was like, well, we're going to go ahead and just promote you to stay with this class and have you, go to the 7th grade when you start in the fall. And it was like, what? Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know what to expect with all of that, because I really wasn't into education at that time. But that really changed my trajectory on that as well. And for me, Russ, I don't know if y'all realize it, but when the 80s started, that was when my mom went into the Army. So that was, again, a time where she was gone for a couple of years and I was staying with my grandmother, which was why I was on the south side of Chicago. So again, the 80s was a whole start to a change for me, and overall it was a great time. So I'm happy that we're talking about this today.
That's interesting. We were I'm sorry, Greg, I was just going to say we were immersed in elementary schools that were essentially all black growing up in Maywood. My principal was black at my elementary school, and at Roosevelt, they called us the suburbs of Maywood, right? Like, I mean, Maywood is a suburb, but within Maywood, where Greg went, I guess was more like the, quote unquote the hood or something. I don't know, but they used to say that Roosevelt was the bougie school, because we were right near the border of Broadview. Broadview, our neighboring town, was still predominantly white at that time. So they said, but we grew up, most of my teachers were black, most of my, and the administrators were black. So that was just the way it had been. So didn't really even think twice about it until it got to high school. Then it was some white people there, and it was like, okay, both faculty and students. So that was a little different. I had a couple of white kids in my class in grammar school, but for the most part, it was all black.
Well, it's interesting that you put it that way. I do think of your grammar school as being sort of like almost like the HBCU of schools in our district. My school, while it was obviously majority black, we had quite a few Latino students at Emerson back then. I don't know, but obviously because of where it is, but that's one of the somewhat unique things about Emerson. It really was a struggling school, but it was a little bit more diverse than like Roosevelt or Irving or whatever. It wasn't quite as diverse as like Melrose Park or Lincoln, but it was definitely a bit more
Wasn't
diverse.
Emerson the original home of Proviso East?
Yeah, sure was. It sure was.
Yeah. Before it got its own school, before it's got its own building, it was housed in Emerson, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, they used to have the plaque out in front of their school. You could see it where it was called Proviso. But one of the things though I remember most about the 80s, particularly the early part, really is like Saturday morning cartoons. Like that's the thing I remember most, whether and it's funny because in the fall, in September was when the new season started. And you just, I couldn't wait, to watch that first. See, like it was like, man, that first and my favorite was Super Friends. Like that was that was my favorite. And then by the end, you like Soul Train at 11. Like That's so foundational to me culturally, right? From the cartoons, eating your cereal.
Yep.
Man, I would be crushing a big bowl of. Well, we didn't get to do the sugary cereals in my crib. It was either Cheerios, Corn Flakes, or Corn Chex. When we got fancy, it was some Rice Krispies because you could hear the little crackle pops. But yeah, we couldn't do any of the sugary stuff. Only when we went over our cousins. If we stayed overnight at a cousin's, man, then we might get some of the. What was the ones with all the different colors? They were kind of like Rice Krispies, something
Lucky
like
Charms.
that. Lucky Charms, yeah, Lucky Charms or some Cocoa
Fruity
Puffs.
Pebbles, yeah.
Fruity Pebbles, that's what the ones. That's
Pebbles,
with all of the colors,
like
yeah.
eating a bowl of sugar.
Right.
Yes,
Exactly.
bouncing off the walls, Jack.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm with you on that one too. The Saturday morning cartoons, sitting down in front, trying to flip between the stations and hopefully catch the other cartoon on the other station doing a commercial so you can see what's going on and everything. And then, like you said, then checking out Soul Train after that.
Speed Racer. Speed Racer was my joint, man. That was it. That was how I cracked my head open because of Speed Racer. That might have been
trying to be
in
Speed
the
Racer.
70s. That might have been in the 70s,
Right,
though. I think I was younger at that point.
I think
But
that was 70s. But yeah, leading up to all of this, though, right?
And at some point after Soul Train, we had to do our chores, clean the house, right?
Clean it up. That's right. Before you can go out, then we would go out and play and ride the bikes or do skateboarding. Wasn't that around then?
Yeah,
as well,
skateboards was a thing,
and
bro.
stuff as well. So yeah, that is true, man. That is true.
So the early 80s for me, like I said, basketball, that would have been the time. So my 80 to 82, like I said, that's 6th grade through 8th grade. So every summer was 10th Park for us. 10th Park, for those who don't know, is a famous park in Maywood, Illinois, where some of the best basketball ever was played. People talk about places like the Rucker and stuff like that in New York. 10th Park back in the day was on that kind of level. And we would walk over there from my house. It was on the other, it was on the other side of the bridge, as we used to say, right? Back then.
Yeah.
Maywood was divided. Part of Maywood was on one side of the Eisenhower Expressway and the other part was on the other side. And so you had to cross the expressway so you could do it at 9th Avenue, 5th Avenue, 17th Avenue, places where you could literally take the bridge across the expressway. So we lived across the bridge. We were on the south side of Maywood, and 10th Park and Greg and Proviso East and a lot of that stuff was on the north side of the expressway. So we would take that trek. It was like a good probably 3 miles. I don't know, something like that.
That's
a pretty good one. Yeah. That's a pretty good one.
We would make that hike all the time. And me and my brother, my boy Mark, Marcus Taggart, we would be walking over there, and we would have this competition going on all the time as we're walking to see who could dribble through their legs the longest without messing up. And usually Taggart won. As we got older, he became an incredible ball handler. You had to just keep walking between your legs, crossing between your legs and see how long you could do it. Mark would go well over a mile before he would mess up, just on our way over there. But that summer, those early summers, we were at 10th Park and then we were at Fred Hampton. That's when I learned how to swim. Summers at Fred Hampton. For those who don't know who Fred Hampton is, shame on you, because you should know. That's American history. That's not Black American history. But Fred Hampton, the swimming pool in Maywood where we grew up, was named after Fred Hampton because of his legendary status. And in addition to the civil rights work that he did as a member of the Black Panthers, he was very much into swimming and getting Black kids opportunities. And so he used to take Black kids from Maywood all over the place to give them opportunity to swim. We grew up going to the Fred Hampton pool, and at the time as shorties, we had no clue the history, why it was named Fred Hampton. But I had some of the best times in my life at Fred Hampton in the early 80s. Just love that, man.
Yeah, and for me, baseball was also important in that period. Of course, we went to Fred Hampton. It was always a little too much going on in the pool for me to get in. There were baseball fields around there, little league, and we called Pee Wee League too.
Yeah.
And so going to play baseball was the thing I enjoyed more than swimming back then. Like I said, swimming was way too much way hectic at Fred Hampton, but we'd go up there all the time. But it was, for me, always the thing was baseball.
That's it. I think for me, if we getting athletic, it was about cycling. I like to ride bikes a lot. So going up and down areas, park trails, things like that on the sidewalk, of course, because we didn't have too many park trails as well to do. But doing that and skateboarding, I was really into skateboarding at that time as well. I had my helmet and stuff, trying to do the flips and the tricks and all that other stuff. With some crazy times, but fun times too.
Well, it's funny, in Maywood, we actually had we had the Forest Preserve bike trails, and that was what we were riding the bikes. We'd be up in there, man, and there was like almost like hills, and like there's like Des Plaines River right there. There's a way in which growing up in Maywood at that time was like you had the ability to experience a whole lot of things.
Yeah, all of those coming of age movies from back in the day, we lived that for the most part, right? At some point or another. And I remember you saying, Greg, about like all of the bike trails and stuff. Yeah, there were dirt bike trails where we could jump hills and do all of that kind of fun stuff. I just remember one time I got put on punishment because I was out bike riding with my boy Oliver, who was a year younger than me, but his older brother Maury was we were following Maury, and Maury Maury rode me probably, I don't know where I was. I had no clue. If they ditched me, I would have had no way of getting home, because I was, we were so far away and had gone over so many bridges and hills and done all of that. But we were gone for some hours, and my brother's credit, he wouldn't give me up. The old man was like, where's Ricky at? I don't know. I don't know. He knew I had rolled out with Oliver and Maury some hours ago.
He was your co-conspirator.
At some point, apparently,
right?
Yeah. Apparently, at some point, my old man got his bike out and was riding the neighborhood looking for me. I came home several hours later, like, nothing was wrong. Hey, how y'all doing? Yeah, snatched up real quick, but it was an incredible adventure. I had a wonderful time. Don't know, like I said, don't have a clue where I was, but yeah, because he was a big kid, so we were like, I was probably 11 or something like that. Maury was probably 16. So he was an adult almost in our eyes at that point. Yeah, but that was fun. So Rubik's Cube, that was my joint.
You were doing that, man. You were solving that thing around that time too, weren't you?
Yeah, so that was a little beyond 82. That would have been when we were moving into the high school years, like 82 to 86. But yeah, I had gotten to the point where I could solve it in under a minute. At one point. Yeah.
So that was frustrated with that thing, man, and figuring out ways to at least quote solve it, but not really solving it type deal. Oh, there you go.
This is the new This is the new third. This is a 3D one.
Wow.
That I have never successfully solved it once yet, because it's 3-dimensional, and when I say that, you've got different sized cubes. If you notice, the shapes are different. As you can see, some are squares, different rectangles. And so all of it moves in the same way that a Rubik's Cube moves, but because you've got these different sizes and sides and all of that, it's not as simple. Color doesn't matter. As you notice, this is monochrome. It's like a gold color.
Right.
But the colors don't matter because of the different size shapes. So yeah, this one broke my brain a few months ago, and I haven't tried it again. It's just been sitting there. It's just become an artifact on my desk at this point.
Wow.
But yeah, I was able to do the traditional Rubik's Cube in under a minute at one point.
Wow. Instead of pulling it apart or taking off the colors and repasting them on there type deal, right? You actually
you could tell when somebody had done that, because you could never perfectly line all of the peeled things back up perfectly. Oh, you was cheating on this one. Yeah.
That's funny.
That's it, man. Golly.
I actually figured it out. I don't know how long I don't know if it was a minute or something. I don't know if I was fast as Holloway, but I did figure it out. like we'd go everywhere with that thing. Just
And
using it enough times, I eventually figured it out.
I think I only hit that thing one time, and I would assume, because I never really looked it up or, even since that time, but there's got to be a pattern to what that is to get it to that point. And, I know there's something to it. I never researched it after,
Yeah, it's definitely it's a mathematical equation to it, and
Right.
so you can from almost any setting you can solve it, which is why it became about speed after a while.
Right.
And you said the magic word, you said pattern. That took me to another 1980 to 82 thing. Pattern.
What's that?
Pac-Man. Man,
Right.
that was the joint back then.
Right.
And I remember, so 82 would have been 8th grade year, and so we would go to this spot on 17th. Near Roosevelt, maybe a block. I want to say, I'm forgetting the name of it. The name Dom Joe's has popped into my head, but I think Dom Joe's is a different spot. That might be a different spot, but there was a spot on 17th. Now, actually, my buddy's Aldwin Rowe, his State Farm office is locating in what used to be this little hot dog spot, a little restaurant spot that we would go to. And they had the Pac-Man machine in there, and I had gotten really good at it because I learned the pattern. And, until you get to once you get to level 100 or something, then the pattern switches finally, and then the ghosts start doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but you have to get up to those levels. And they would let the kids know when it was time for them to return back to school, because we could go out. We could be in there in the morning, and you'd be like, okay, it's time for you to go. So other kids would leave, and we'd play their quarters because people put their quarters in the machine.
Quarter on there. Say, I'm next.
Yep, I'm next. Right. But then it was time. Oh, y'all got to get going. Y'all got to get back to class. And they would roll out, and we'd be late. We'd be like, I'm gonna take their quarters and play and play some more rounds.
Right.
But yeah, Pac-Man was the joint. Pac-Man, and then Miss Pac-Man,
and then Miss Pac-Man. Yep, Pac-Man definitely was the joint. Centipede
and Galaga.
Right, all of that, man. In pole position. Remember getting to the space and driving and everything.
Yep.
But think about that too, bros, about an arcade. So, arcade setting. This was our lights, didn't have a clock around, so that was our casinos, for the young folks, basically was that. But then again, in a time where we all would congregate at the arcade, play some video games, talk it up, see who can get the high score, and things of that nature, and keep it moving type deal. But nowadays, I don't even know if they have things like that where kids can go, especially unsupervised. Again, the 80s, think about it. You just said it, Rick, about how you were riding around, doing all kind of stuff. We talk about playing games, walking the neighborhood, and all of that. We could, in essence, do that without having that level of concern, though there were still things going on. Don't get us wrong, but yet still there was a level of safety that I think we felt.
Oh, no question.
With doing those things as well. But yeah. And also, that was, go ahead, GK.
No, I was like, man, we used to take the train downtown to go see movies. Like you'd go, it'd be like the McVickers or the Woods or Staten Lake theaters, and you'd be there all day, like 2 or 3 karate
a group
flicks.
Of us taking the train down to the pavilion, the UIC pavilion, for the Def Jam. Way back in the day when first time we'd ever seen Public Enemy was at the pavilion. A bunch of us had jumped on the train and went down there.
You would jump on the train, and for the movies part, you'd be there. You'd be down there all day, and then you'd go after the movie. You'd go to the arcade. Right. Try to maybe go to Ronnie's Steakhouse or something downtown.
Right.
It was the movies all day. I don't think we were like teenagers, or barely, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was never a big deal. You taking the train downtown.
Yeah. But nowadays, when you see the young people by themselves, you're like, what are y'all doing? What are they doing? It's just, it's a totally different world. The notion of being unsupervised.
Right.
Because there are places like that now. I mean, the place where Regina and I bowl at, Lucky Strikes, they got bowling and they got video games and all of that, and they got laser tag in there. But by the time you see the young people alone, they're almost adults, not like we were. We,
Right.
like
Well,
you said,
now,
we'd be in there 10 to 12, 13, just running
right,
around for hours. And now a lot of
right,
places you can't have but 2
right,
or 3 unsupervised young people in a place, or
right.
they got limits on the number of young people
And by
without a
6 o'clock,
parent.
you better have an adult with you, right? And things as well.
Mhm.
A whole lot different.
That's funny. Bowling, man, like that
Mm-hmm.
was a whole thing back then. Bowling was a
Mhm.
big bowling leagues.
You're right.
And like, I mean, yeah, bowling was like a major thing
We used
in
to,
the 80s.
when we all went away to college, when we would come home those first few years, so that was still during the 80s. That was
Mm-hmm.
during that 86 to 89 period.
Mm-hmm.
We would all get together. That had become one of the ways we got together, is we would get together and go
Mm-hmm.
bowling, big groups of us.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. And then I don't know if anybody was blessed to have, though it came out in what, 78, but the Atari game
Yeah.
was now things we were doing at home. And then in the
Yeah.
80s, actually, Nintendo hit the scene with the home gaming. Well, so, having folks playing video games and stuff like that.
All
I was
day.
part of that, right, as well.
Yeah,
As
I had the
well.
Atari 400 computer. We
Mhm.
didn't get the console game. I had the Atari 400 computer, so we played all the games on there, and then I learned how to do some programming
Yep.
and stuff as well, BASIC and Fortran and
Yep.
some of those
Fortran.
back in the day.
Wow.
Okay. Okay.
BASIC, Fortran, COBOL, I think
Yeah.
Mhm. I
yeah.
had a Commodore
Not that I knew
64.
how to do anything with any of them, but I remember the names.
I had a Commodore 64, man. And remember, you could learn how to make little animated images and stuff with that as well if you do the coding and
Mhm.
things. So yeah,
I took basic programming at Proviso East
Yeah.
in
Those are
the
class.
summer. And as a,
Yep.
I was a super nerd back then. I went to summer school almost every year, never because I had to, just because it was
Uh-huh.
other classes I wanted to take, and that didn't fit into the schedule. That's how much of a nerd I was. Apparently, I would be the only one in the class, pretty much that didn't have to be there.
Right. I'll be honest, I wasn't there. So yeah.
My
went
freshman
one
year, I forget what.
year.
Yeah,
I can't
I was
remember
in
what
there. It
it
was like mostly seniors, so it was cool to get to hang
Yeah.
out with the older kids. But yeah, but crazy thing was when I took the basic class, my mother was teaching computer. She was teaching the computers at the school that she was teaching at. So it turned out that
Okay.
we had the same book.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had the
Wow.
teacher's manual at the crib.
Wow. There you go. There you go.
Almost got in trouble because I'm just blindly copying from the teacher's
Right.
manual. And one of them, it said answers may vary. And I had written down answers may vary.
My goodness.
Thank God I haven't. For that one time, I decided to review my work.
Right.
I read that and said answers may vary. Ooh.
Right.
That was your early AI GPT.
Right. Right.
It was
That's
like,
right.
okay, I guess I better do my homework myself.
Oh
Man.
man.
You know what was always huge also at that time? I was still talking a little bit about the animation and stuff, was G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe had hit in the 80s, man. So Snake Eyes and Joe and all of them and everything going on. That was some exciting stuff
Joe
at that
with the
time.
Kung Fu grip.
Yep. G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip. That's right.
G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip.
That's right.
Hey,
That's right.
don't.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Funny. Hey, yo, but don't sleep on Scooby Doo though.
No,
Scooby Doo, man, was the joint too.
That was as well, man. Scooby and Scrappy, them characters right there, boy.
Yeah.
Stuff they get into.
For all of the goofiness, they would have like these serious mystery things going on. It's like, who is it? Who done it?
Who done it? That's
and it was usually some old rich white man.
Right.
I was like,
kids, right?
I was like, who knew? Who knew that they were speaking truth decades into the future? It was always some greedy old rich white man that was the source of the problems.
They were an interesting group when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Oh my
The
gosh,
crew,
right.
the crew, right?
The crew. And how old were they that they were driving around in a van, in the mystery van,
Mystery
doing this
man.
stuff? Right.
Like straight up hippies, right? They were
Right,
basically
right,
hippies with a
right,
dog.
That was it.
right.
With
And
the
I think they were
dog.
supposed to be teenagers, but
That's what I
back
was
then,
thinking, right?
back then on TV, everybody was a lot older. At least we thought,
Right.
Yeah.
right? It was just I don't know, I guess the way the world was aging at that point, Muggs aged a lot faster,
Yeah.
When you think about shows like Archie Bunker, what's that, All in the Family?
All
Yeah.
in the family.
They
Yep.
looked like they were in their 60s or something.
Right. And they weren't.
Yep,
right.
they weren't.
They were
Yep.
around
true.
40.
Right.
Yep.
That's true.
Carol
That
O'Connor
is
was
true.
too good at his job. Well, you know who was even better at her job was Edith. Oh my God.
Yeah, the
Oh,
actress
wow.
that played Edith Bunker.
Yeah, the acting was off
Yeah.
the charts. Occasionally I'll
Yeah.
watch All in the Family now, and just the acting was like off the
Yeah.
charts good,
Yeah.
I've seen
They did.
interviews of Carol O'Connor talking about that character.
Mm.
And he basically described it, the way he described it, he was a despicable person whose
Mm-hmm.
mother really didn't love him, and all of these just terrible things, the way he described them. And I was like, wow, he described the maggot of today
Yeah.
in so many
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, well, and that's more on point than folks might realize, because that's actually where he grew up. He grew up in Queens. And
Yeah.
so there's a whole way in which he's kind of Archie Bunker, circa 1982, 81. You can tell, right? His worldview is very much informed by Queens, New York, 1980s,
Mhm.
No, that's true. But that brings us back to the shows. You had started off talking about the Cosby Show, man. That was the 80s.
Right. Mhm.
For us to see that and to believe that all of that could happen or was even going on in some households, to see the culture that was coming through, the clothing, the language, the sense of education's important and why it's important in things, man. I think the Cosby Show, give whatever personalities or whatever later on in life, learning about and things like that. I think the essence of what the show was about was huge for our population, our culture, and our growth as well.
Yeah, the one beauty about TV and movies is that because it's artificial, it's a set thing, is scripted and painted and made to look a certain way. We were oblivious to the real life freaky deaky that Bill might have had going on.
Well, no question.
And so that part is kind of like people say, well, how can you like an artist that, like, I'll use the example of R. Kelly, and I was like, well, I never liked him, so that's different.
Exactly.
For me. I never liked him as an artist because I never liked his music because of the message that was always in it from the beginning. You remind me of my Jeep, all of that kind of stuff. So that always turned me off from the beginning. So I didn't feel any kind of way when I learned about the things that he had done.
Same here.
Versus Bill Cosby, I definitely felt some kind of way later. But that didn't impact or change my formation, right? We're talking about our formative years and all of that. Because it was so well insulated, so well hidden, it was so completely offset that all we got was the polished, cleaned up version of things. And so that part didn't tarnish me.
Right.
So more effectively able to segregate those
Right.
the Cosby Show in a different world
entertainment versus the real life
versus who Bill Cosby turned out to be later on. I can still appreciate that show and all of that. R. Kelly and his music I never liked, and so I never really got on board. Now, he was incredibly talented, and there was a few joints in there that was jams, but I would never ever seek them out to listen to them.
Same here.
So I'm able to, I guess, separate those a little bit differently there.
Yeah,
but
nobody knew about what Cosby was doing back then. He was like the perfect dad.
Exactly.
And he was like everything. And its impact on like our image of ourselves and like it's just impossible to overstate. I mean, by the time I'm in Iowa, Thursdays was like the best day of the week because we'd all get together at the Afro House and get our food and watch the Cosby Show, and then different world.
Yep.
That was how I got introduced to the University of Illinois. Was I went down there for a visit while I was in high school, and my cousin Tina went with me. So we went down there and we ended up, and that's how I ended up choosing the dorm that I ended up in as a freshman, Allen Hall, because when we went by the dorm, it happened to be around when we got there. It was all my children was on, and so all of the black students in the dorm were downstairs in the lobby where the big TV was, watching all my children. So I walk, so
which is
these
a
people
soap opera for the youngins.
Right, for the youngins. All my children was a soap opera, and so they had all manipulated their schedules so that they didn't have class, so they could watch all my children. And it was like 35 black students in the lobby and on all of the furniture when we walk in. And they look back to see who is these other black people coming in. I'm just like, wow. Look at this. So that contributed to me wanting to go there. And that was going on in all of the dorms all over for all my children, for the Cosby Show, for A Different World, all of that.
Yeah.
So that just added to it. That was a very cool time.
Well, and that was where we got Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids and what they were doing, and I'll say the birth of Denzel on St. Elsewhere was in the 80s, a black doctor. Now we seeing that going on TV. But going back to all
LA
my children,
Law.
man.
LA Law.
Oh, LA Law, right.
What years was LA Law on?
Don't forget
Oh
Miami
my
Vice.
gosh. Yes.
With
So
Trudy.
this was the age of a lot of that, man.
Man, okay, what's the brother's name? Because I'm having a brain moment from LA Law.
Blair Underwood.
Jimmy?
Yeah,
Blair
Blair Underwood. Yes,
Yep.
I told him I got the chance to meet him a few years back. He was the guest speaker for one of our graduations.
Okay.
And so I was telling him, and our boy Strott, he knows Strott from his work with the Obama Foundation and all of that. But we were chatting at the time, and I was telling him how instrumental he was in me wanting to become a lawyer.
Wow.
And so that made
That's
his day.
awesome.
But that was a funny day in general because every sister that crossed the stage that graduated that day wanted a hug.
Right.
And so
Because of
I was
impact,
cracking up,
right?
giving him a hard
Right.
time because he stood up and sat down about 100 times during that ceremony. Because one sister did it, and then every sister that came after that had to get her a hug. And so you could tell the sisters that were early in the line was mad because they didn't think to do it.
Right.
Somebody cracked open the
But yeah, LA Law, that was the show back in the day for me.
With all my children, remember the whole big thing, which had to be a new concept, was Jesse and Angie and how popular they made all my children during that time, man. I mean, two black, young folks commanding viewership just to see their stories, man, and see how they were going to turn out and everything. So
Miss Dimples.
Yes. That's her.
Wow.
That's her.
A soap opera was the joint back then. We couldn't wait for All My Children.
Right.
It came on at noon, I think, in Chicago.
At noon,
It came on at noon. All My Children, and then after that
school
was
for
One
lunch.
Life to Live.
One Life to Live. And then General
Baby
Hospital.
sequence,
Yeah,
yep.
that was Luke
There
and
you
Laura
have
on General
Luke
Hospital.
and Laura,
right?
bro.
Yep.
Yes. Like, man, yeah. Those are some good times, man. Great times, interesting times to see those kind of growth opportunities, especially on TV. And then, so y'all might laugh at me. I think y'all already know, but my movie coming into the 80s was Grease. So Grease actually came out in 78, but it got me, it was what I think got me prepared for coming to high school.
Tell me
'cause I
more.
was
Tell me more.
There you go, brother. That's it, man. That's it. Shoot, you can tell me that's what high school wasn't supposed to be about. So,
So when you got there for real,
right.
how did that compare to the?
I was like, God dang, y'all ain't singing in the cafeteria
Ain't
and
nothing
all
like
this
this.
on up in there. Like, this ain't it. Man, I had my blue jean jacket, I was like, yeah, man, that's what we're supposed to be doing
That's
up in
why
there.
John used to roll up his cuffs. That explains that.
That's
why he used to roll up his cuffs on his jeans.
That's right. Yep.
Get Joe Travolta on.
That's
Okay.
it. I love some Grease, man. That's probably my favorite all-time movie, man, is Grease.
Wow.
And then the other movies that came out during that time, like The Breakfast Club, the Brat Pack, at least for us,
Breakfast
the Brat
Club.
Pack at that time.
Oh, yeah.
St. Elmo's Fire,
Yeah.
that whole crew of stuff, I would say would have some reflective reflection of how we spend some of our time, especially
Yeah.
at like at a Proviso East. You know what I'm saying?
Man, and
Because
that
of how
ties into the
diverse we were.
music you were talking about.
Right. And that was
Like
the
those
tie into the
movies. I mean,
music.
so many of those pop songs are still embedded in my head. Like when you said Breakfast Club, what immediately started playing in the back of my head was "Don't You
Don't
Forget
forget
About Me."
about
Right.
me.
Right. Right.
Don't.
Well, music was not nearly as segregated as it is now, like it's as it became. Like you,
Yeah.
like my favorite radio station back then was GCI in Chicago, and you get everything from Men at Work singing Down Under,
Yep.
a song about Australia. Imagine that in one song, and the next song you're hearing Grover Washington Jr. And like it was such a natural way to hear music where you didn't think about sort of the race of the artist. In fact, the funny thing about radio back then, a good chunk of the DJs that I loved and tried to emulate were on black radio were actually white, which is a whole thing. You know, guys like Bob Wall, he would do the morning
Bob
show
Wall.
on GCI. I would not miss that for anything in the world. Every morning I would get up and listen to Bob Wall. And then you'd have a woman like Barbara Stanek. She'd close it out.
Right.
My favorite all-time voice was a guy named Evan Luck. Turns out these are all white people on a black radio station. But the music was just diverse and you got exposed to it. And of course, at the same time, you got MTV.
Right.
Which they weren't playing any black music at first, right?
Well, Michael, they played Michael.
Until Michael
first. Right. Until Michael hit it. Right.
But it had been around for a minute before Mike bust on through.
Right.
And
That's
so
true.
we were fully immersed. I was fully immersed in the Police and everybody you could think of.
Wham,
at that time, Duran.
Culture Club, Duran. Yep. You too. Yep. A lot of those folks we knew, and it was like, that was just part of the scene. That was part of the music and everything. And
but you didn't mention, Greg, the station that we all ended up getting sucked into at one point or another at lunchtime was
BMX, brother. Yep.
Hot lunch mix.
The hot lunch mix, brother. The hot mix 5. Farley.
Farley.
Well, that's a whole other thing too. The Hot Mix 5. I think 3 or 4 of the 5 were actually white. Like 2 were white, and I think 1 or 2 Latinos. It was like 1 or 2. But there was so much diversity, even amongst the Hot Mix 5 on a black radio, nominally black radio station. So it's just funny.
That's Chicago music, though. When you look at it, right? I mean, when you look at house music, hip hop. In Chicago, it's always been a very diverse, very mixed group. That was just kind of how it was, how we did things back then.
Yep. It's fascinating. And, just...
LL, Run, DMC, when we started talking about a little hip-hop back then, for me, that was... Because house music I wasn't really into back then. Like that. You brought me along to house music when you guys were Minaj and that whole thing when we were in high school. I was straight up Run DMC.
Yes, you were.
That was my thing, was Run DMC. I used to wear the Adidas.
Yes, you were.
Hat like them. I was 100%.
You
Run
were an
DMC.
early adopter of rap music for sure. Because you had the hits like Houdini. They were just hot and they played that everywhere. But you were into rap music in a way that I hadn't even understood as a thing, until later.
Yeah. But I think that's towards the end of the 80s, that was when you got sucked out all the way in. Now, that was when you got like De La. No, that's towards the end of the 80s though, but De La Soul and that whole vibe
Tribe.
that they came in with, the Tribe and all of them, that was a major shift in hip hop. That was the sample era was taking off. That was before people realized how much money was involved in sampling.
Yep.
Yeah, Kool Moe Dee, Fat Boys, all that was going on, man. So,
Kool Moe Dee. Wow, now that's a blast. Well, I think by 89, to me, one of the most important albums from the 80s was actually at the end, and it was like you could talk about British soul generally, like Loose Ends and all of that. Junior, but to me, it was going to be Soul to Soul. That album that they came out with, Keep On Moving, that kind of created a whole new sound that just didn't seem to exist before that album came out.
No, I agree with you. That was definitely impactful. I don't know, you guys remember Lisa Stansfield?
Yeah.
And all of that, man.
Around the World.
Yes, man.
British Soul, man, was man.
Sade was on the scene at that time as well, wasn't she?
Yes, brother.
So, man, we had a plethora of just
my freshman year in college, I transformed my white roommate into a Sade fan.
Because that's it.
The Diamond Life album.
Yes.
That was my go to sleep music every night. And so I wore that tape out because that was before before I had a CD.
Well, yeah.
I would play that Diamond Life album every night, start the tape and go to sleep to it. And so he got used to it. So I remember one night he was like, "Hey, you're not going to put on Sade?" I was like, "Oh, my bad. Yeah."
Right.
Mm-hmm. That Diamond Life.
But that made me think then just about the mixtapes and having to put a tape in for the hot mix that was going on so that you can have it for later on to listen to and try to make your mood music tape, try to get it off the radio and everything. Not get the this is WGCI type radio and all of that we used to have.
Oh,
and
man.
then the answering machines. Just thinking about that and hello, is it you looking for? Just all of that stuff that we used to have.
Well, don't forget about
there.
call waiting. Remember when that became a thing?
Oh, Jesus.
Man, I didn't get call waiting until I got to college.
Right.
Yeah, if you called my crib, you just got a busy tone because we didn't have call waiting.
Oh, and then three-way calling? You didn't do, man, listen.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I didn't get it. I didn't experience those kind of things until I got to college. The folks wasn't adding no extras on,
doing that.
No, that's just gonna make the bill higher. What you need to know if it's somebody else calling for you. You can't talk to but one person at a time.
Right.
Well, I don't know why.
It had the long phone cord that took you from room to room.
I don't know why my parents were so open to it, but cable TV was like a big life changer, right?
They were open to it because it was just 3 stations
all day
before that
and all night.
Right.
Was
it on TV?
Well,
on TV was before cable.
Yeah, on TV.
That was before cable. On TV and Spectravision. Yeah, those were before.
Yes.
That was before the cable company that we had. And so those were, I remember on TV. I remember that was back then. I remember when we were in high school, the one day that on TV broke.
I know what you're thinking, John, and I know what you're about to say.
Everybody knew about it. That was the craziest thing. Everybody was watching through the lines, right? On the regular. So for the younger generations that don't have a clue what we're talking about, back then, just like nowadays, we got Netflix and you got all of your subscription stuff. Mm-hmm. On TV was like one of the first ones like that, but it was it satellite or was it like early cable? No, it was broadcast. It was broadcast, but you had to have a special antenna.
Right.
If you didn't have their special antenna, you ended up with the picture was split down the middle. It was a squiggly line down the center. And so you could still watch the show and you could still hear the show if you were willing to watch through the squiggly lines.
Well, and sometimes, I don't know what they did, but it would just get clear and you'd watch. If
that
you
was what happened. I was saying it was
the
one night.
Yeah,
it was one day where they screwed up. And because apparently everybody used to watch through the lines because the next day we came to school, everybody was like, "Did you see on TV last night?"
And it was adult content for real.
It was right. It was adult content too. No, it was softcore, whatever, compared to the filth that's out there today. But it was a come up for everybody. Everybody came to school that next day. Hey, was you? And so the word must have spread. Everybody that wasn't watching got a phone call from somebody that said, "Hey, turn to channel 44 or 49 or whatever number it was." Because it was way down on the UHF band.
Right. Yes.
That's
That's
right.
Oh
funny.
my
On TV.
gosh.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
At night on TV broke. Whatever.
Yeah,
That is true.
yeah. You got a little.
Golly.
I just remember so much, just like excitement about just sitting there and falling asleep watching TV, and everybody would talk about what they saw the next day.
It was
Because
because it
everybody
was
watched the
all of a
same
sudden
things.
all of those
Yep.
channels. Because we
Yep.
all went from we had 2, 5, 7, 9, and 32. And then,
Yep.
you got channel 11, PBS.
Yep.
And then if you play with the UHF, you might find some other little janky channel in there somewhere. But it was
Like
basically
44 or something like that. I
yeah,
think
44 at
32.
work
was.
sometime, and 32 and 26
But
at
it's
one
funny
point.
how that so influences, I think, to this day, TV watching. Like Channel 2 was never like my favorite because it always had the worst signal. But Channel
Yes.
7,
Yep.
Channel 9, those were like always had the clearest signals of all. And that so influenced my viewing pattern. Even now,
Yeah.
Well,
I
And
just
then
and
default
channel
to
9.
Channel 7.
I used to say when I got to Howard, I was trying to figure out why there were so many Cubs fans
Yeah.
in the DC and
Yeah.
at Howard, because I'm like, nah, I'm a Sox fan. This is what I'm
Mhm.
about. But it didn't hit me until realizing that WGN.
Was
Yeah.
a superstation.
Everybody
That was
got to see get to see the
Right.
Cubs.
Yep.
It was,
Right.
and that's
And
like
that's
we never
why.
thought about TNT, but that was just originally an Atlanta station, right?
Yep.
TNT was a superstation, and TBS they became superstations just like
Yep.
WGN. Yeah,
Yep.
that tripped me out too. Once I really got that understanding of how many. That was why Michael Jordan became so popular. It wasn't about because the NBA contract wasn't worth nothing back in the day as far as the NBA TV contract,
Right.
until later.
Right.
He got to see a lot of Jordan games because of WGN.
Yep.
That's why.
Yep.
That's how you ended up with so many Bulls fans all over the country
Yep.
early on.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
same thing with Oprah. Like you can go on and on. All these
Yep.
people became famous, but just because of where they were
Right.
on the TV dial, right?
That's true.
Donahue,
And then,
like on and
y'all
on.
remember on the weekends getting ready to go to Blockbuster. Got to go get the latest video or some videos that you hadn't seen.
Yeah.
And they used to have a massive group of when the new ones came out of the videos. I always wonder what they did with those videos after. after the
Right. They
hotness
would have
wore off.
500 copies of what this one movie was. And then
Right.
about
What they do
2
with
months
them?
later, they had 3 copies.
Right.
Right.
You know?
Right.
What did they do? But
Well,
man,
that reminds me of my stepfather's favorite movie of all time was Harlem Nights. And he would he obviously got fancy and we actually bought the thing, but he'd always be like, put that movie on, put Harlem Nights on. And it would that was like over and over and over and over again, man.
That's it. That
So-
is it.
GK talked to me about the clothing. You and John were a lot more fashion forward when we were in high school than I was. I pretty much just put on the same thing. I did rock my penny loafers though. I had me some sweet penny loafers, and my old man, the Vietnam veteran Marine, had me spit shine in my shoes, so they looked like glass. I had on some dusty jeans, but my penny loafers was always tight.
Penny loafers. I can almost remember you wearing penny loafers at this point. Well, everything was prep. We would call it preppy now, right? The baggy jeans, you roll up, or the baggy khakis, you roll them up. But you'd wear Reeboks. Reeboks were pretty fly in the earlier part of the 80s. So you'd rock, you'd rock.
I had on my Adidas.
Yeah, of course, Run DMC, right? And then we wound up, what became popular for a while was wearing sort of Army surplus stuff. So patent leather shoes were a thing for a minute. Paisley shirts.
Right. I had some Paisley. Did you guys
with
do?
the-
I
with the
never had
button-
any of the Izods.
Button up to
But I
the
know-
top.
I remember the
back then,
Izods
Izod was Lacoste.
with the alligator.
It was either Polo or Izod Lacoste. And of course, Polo still doing this thing all these years later. But yeah, it was all about being preppy and then
The
getting your high
colors.
top box.
I
A lot
remember
of colors at that time as well.
my freshman year in college, they had Carson's was the store.
Mm-hmm.
Carson
Yeah,
Perry Scott.
Carson Perry Scott.
Yeah, before Macy's bought them out. Carson's, there was a Carson's down on near campus, and they would have college night. So everything, was super, super discounted, and everybody would be in there, and so that people would be getting all of the polo gear and the Izod and all of that stuff. That stuff was
in
real
Iowa City. We
popular.
had Yonkers. That was like I think they might have even had the same parent company, but they basically give away credit cards. So
Right, that's what happened. All you had to do was show if you were a currently registered student, you got some credit. And that was how I first started screwing up my credit score.
Exactly.
Sure, we'll give you $1,000 of credit while you have no realistic way of paying it back.
Right.
Don't worry about that.
Right. We had at DC, we had Macy's, Dillard's, but red, black, and green. So the sort of African colors and stuff what we were wearing and stuff at that time and everything as well, man. To look at the '90s high tops, X-Clan, all of that, right? The cross culture and all of that was going on then too. Willie Ware, right? Willie Ware was there. Fubu, I think, was hitting it around that time as well too.
Don't forget about
80s or 90s.
Jabos.
I don't know. They might have been late 80s. Oh, Jabos. Yep. Guess. Yeah. Wasn't that it around that time?
Yes.
Too,
yep. Definitely.
Yep. Guess was 80s. Well. That would have been earlier 80s. That was like grammar school and high school for the most part. By the time we got to college, their popularity had kind of waned. But they're still around. But there was
right.
Yeah.
But Jabos.
Fubu started in 1989. So 89.
Okay.
But
yeah, Swatch watches.
Jabos. Yep.
Swatch watches. Wow.
Members only. Had to have that members only jacket.
Yeah, I never had any of that.
God. Levi's was still kicking, around that time as well. And Lee's and Lee G, and for the women, with Gloria Vanderbilt or something like that, wasn't that going on around that time?
And Jordan,
and it was Jordan, and it was something with a Sergio something.
Sergio Valente,
there you
right?
go. Yeah, Sergio Valente.
Because I had some young teachers that were wearing Sergio Valentes.
Yep.
I will not say their names because I know one of them is still around.
Yep. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
oh my goodness. But you were
so
free. I mean, your colors and everything were out there during that time as well. And it was just, that's what you wore. That's who you were. That's what it was.
Yep.
Everybody had their own culture that they were rocking. But
and you wanted to be different. Like you didn't want to copy. So like there were obviously elements that were similar, right? Like people that wore Reeboks wore Reeboks. But in my recollection, it feels like everybody wanted to be different from each other, right? You had to come up with your own style, even if you wore some of the name brands, right? Same brands.
Yeah,
it was important to be different. Yeah.
Did you guys have
still carries with me today?
Yeah.
Sony Walkman and all of that.
Sony Walkman
as well. right.
That was a game changer.
You were doing something then.
Yeah. Sony Walkman, when you think about it, it was a game changer because up to then, if people carried around boom boxes or
boombox.
Yeah.
I remember putting my radio on my bike with the stretchers, right?
Yep.
And you thought you was cool riding around the neighborhood with your radio on the bike. But the Sony Walkman changed all of that.
Man, first it was the tape. And like you said, we was already recording stuff off the radio, so you were making your mix tapes and your smooth listening tapes and all of that kind of stuff. And then,
you were the king of SBM on your tape.
Go. Smooth booty music. That's right. I forgot that.
That's right.
You said it. I was gonna say, what is he gonna say it? Yo.
Right.
Of course I am. That's not bleeped out. That's smooth booty music. I forgot that term.
Around. Check out my SBM.
Right.
Got some Isley Brothers on there. Gotta have Always and Forever on there.
Well, it's because you'd have parties, house parties. and people would slow dance with each other.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And you
Gotta have some
you
Rick
put your
James on
slow
there.
jam tape on and
Yep.
Yep.
That's true.
That's
It's true,
crazy
man.
that still was in my head. I haven't used that term since the 80s, right? But it popped right out. SBM tape. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Had to
right.
have some Rick
and
James on there for it,
man,
I mean,
and
definitely
radio
a cool
played
hit.
along too, like after, the Quiet Storm and all of
Right.
that stuff. Such an
Right.
important part of my formative years. Just I can take myself now back to like being outside in the summer with slow jams playing, everybody outside at night. It just stays with you,
Mhm.
That's true.
Yep.
That is true. Well, I think that's taking us near the end of our reminiscence, my brothers.
Yeah, I think we've gone pretty far down memory lane here today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the one thing from the 80s that you wish younger generations could experience?
Ooh.
Think about Miles and Jonathan.
Wow.
More
It's hard to sort of explain, but I think what I look back on is just the sense of community. Like, I don't want to overstate it and make it seem like things were perfect, but there's a way in which I think we had shared culture, like similar understanding about what was happening that I think helped build community in a way that's different. Everybody watched Michael Jackson on that Motown, what was it, Motown 50, whatever it was. Like,
right.
everybody, there's a shared experience that we all had seeing him moonwalk across the stage. And so while I don't know that it's necessary that everyone have the same experience at the same time, I just think it helped build community in a way that feels different today that I wish we had more of.
Yeah.
Like that shared experience, those shared experiences seem to be lacking nowadays because I think it made us stronger and I think it made us less susceptible to misinformation and other things.
It's the
'Cause I feel like we
technological
had
change. I think it's that technological shift because like when we were talking about at first, just the dearth of TV channels to choose from, right? At one point, we were all kind of forced to watch the same thing to a certain extent because it was just so limited in terms of choices. But then, like you said, with Michael Jackson, that particular example, that was at a point when we did have cable. And so there were more choices, but not like today, right? There might have been 50 channels to watch as opposed to 500. All of the different producers of everything that's out there now. So it was still a little more compressed in terms of the choices. And so it was easier still to bring groups of people together because it wasn't 9,000 choices to choose from. So I think the technology, the expanse of the entertainment and media has changed things to a certain extent. But I agree with you, just the feel of things was very different. And I don't know that all of that is technology. I think a lot of that probably is socioeconomic, political change over the decades as well. But this notion of the level of togetherness, the communal feeling, and then also too, that might have been a byproduct too of where we were. Not just when we were. It's not just that it was the 80s. It was the 80s in Maywood. It was the 80s in Proviso Township. We grew up when we were in high school, especially that period, I think is where that feeling of community is probably the strongest at that time for us. So I think that's a byproduct somewhat of where we were and not just when it was, because I don't think everybody had necessarily that special part of the experience that we had. Because I would think that my cousins who were on the west side of Chicago weren't having the same experience, although they were having a similar one in that even because we had a lot of family on the same block or in the same little area. So there was, and everybody else that was there too were very connected. I'm not sure how much of it was really just the time, but also the time and the place.
I think that the common theme, I think, is community and the less isolation. For me, growing up a little bit on the South Side, one of my best friends was Haitian, and two of our other friends that we used to hang out with were Mexican girls. You know what I'm saying? But this is on the south side of Chicago as well. Being able to build that community, that trust, we go over, each other's houses, eat dinner, you laugh with the parents, whatever things like that, what was going on. And then coming to the Maywood Proviso Township area, yeah, that whole experience was about community and less isolation. I think now it's hard. I think it's hard for youth today to communicate and connect with people because a lot of what they do now is social media or chat, or text or things of that nature where we didn't have that. I mean, you had to sit, you had to talk to people, you had to eat lunch with them, you had to do things with them in order to grow and things as well. So I just think that we had a little bit more creativity. We had a little bit more resilience. We had a little bit more connecting right now, and that's part of what I wish younger generation would be able to experience more of as well. And knowing that if you didn't do well, if you failed at something, you fell down, something that it's okay, and you're gonna get right back up, and you're gonna be able to do it. But you're gonna have this community that's gonna help you rise to wherever that next level needs to be. I mean, y'all are my community. Proviso East is my community. I reflect back to my time at Faulkner as my community and things. Howard, definitely my community and everything. All of that is a part of what shaped me, and I can't see not having that and being where I'm at today. And I would just encourage our young ones to don't lose sight of the importance of connecting with people and how much that can be beneficial in all aspects of our wellness as well.
Yep.
I think what I wish younger generations could experience the way we did. I'm going to go back to sports because I was talking about basketball earlier. I wish younger generations could experience sports the way we did. Because again, talking about that freedom and autonomy that we had back then, nowadays helicopter parents are so involved in everything. I talk to my friends and their kids are doing this and that. And, a lot of people in our generation now, their kids are adults. So it might be talking about grandkids or whatever. But the freedom that we enjoyed, I played high school basketball and my parents had no involvement in it until they came to our senior game, the last game of my senior year, where everybody had their parents at the game. They never drove me to practice. They never did any of that kind of stuff. I got a ride or I walked or, I rode with one of my teammates. In the summers, we would be on our bikes. Again, that level of freedom that we had, the world is very different now and safety concerns prevent a lot of that. And then also the politicization and the monetization of sports has changed so much, right?
Yeah.
Now, compared to when we were coming up, today you've got all of the competitive leagues that start by the time they're 10 years old. You got all of the different leaches involved early on. And this also forces kids now to try and make decisions earlier. If you want to be serious about this sport, you don't get as many kids that are seasonal athletes nowadays, right? Back in the day, we played football during football season, basketball during basketball season. Greg ran track, you played tennis. We were all doing whatever was going on during those seasons because we liked doing all of that stuff. Greg played baseball too, so all of these different things but nowadays they start specializing very early. You're gonna play football or you're gonna play football or you're gonna play basketball, you're gonna do that all the time. And there's this focus on the business side of things very early, which I think takes away from the joy.
Yep.
They're learning this sport to try to pursue a professional as opposed to, I didn't think about, and to my detriment in some respects, I didn't think about basketball as a career until way too late. I wasn't focused on that stuff. I was just having fun. If somebody had pushed me, things might have turned out a little differently, but I'm still glad with my life and the way it turned out. And I enjoyed the fact that we just had a blast. Whereas I don't think kids nowadays, the young generations, get to enjoy it that same way. It seems like a job very early on.
I agree with you. And a lot of wear and tear on their growing joints, fellas. So that's the part people don't think about until later, and it's a lot on them. You know, they're still growing, so all of that is still trying to shape and everything. And the demands of playing and trying to be present, and like you said, eventually get into a status where they can try to get some NIL recognition and then maybe get to the pros. But as we all know, that's a steep pyramid, brothers. There ain't a lot of folks down here that's going to get to this level. So, right.
And them just life without social media. What would that be like for this generation if they did, let's say, just grow up like we did and have to get on the phone and talk to somebody or go and do stuff in person?
Or have to wait just until something, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, really, everything is there now. Hey, I can get this, I can see that, I can do this. We had
they don't have to wait a week for the next episode of a show.
Right. Exactly. Or wait to talk to somebody about what they saw or experienced or anything. I mean,
right now they just share the screen. They could do a screen share while it's happening.
Right. Man, just
FaceTime or whatever in real time. You can do these things now, right? That's a very different construct than what we came up in, you know?
Yes.
And so you wonder what is the actual impact of those things, you know? I think we're fortunate in that we're analog, but we're also post-analog. Just imagine if you were all just post-analog. Like, how does your world, how does your brain function? How do you see the world? How do you move?
Well, and does that even affect hope in essence? Because you can't hope that, okay, they're going to be okay, or hope that we're going to be able to reflect back on this episode, hope that they arrive to their destination and things like that. I mean, think about that. Now we're texting, we can communicate sometimes while we still in travel and on the flights. But before, it wasn't that long ago, we had to wait till somebody got to a place where they could actually call to say they made it safely. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But now, so I wonder if and this might be a whole nother episode, brothers, but
I think it is.
If this changes our concept of what hope looks like, you know? So just when you said that, Greg, that was what made me think about that. I'm like, dang, yeah, you don't have to just think or wait or just, I can't think of the terms or words or what I'm really trying to say, but you don't have the ability to just kind of see what's going to happen and be okay with that as well. So
that's like your acceptance, I think, is kind of where you're getting to, is accepting what that reality looks like. And was very different for us for a large part of our experience versus nowadays, where they're programmed to want and expect everything right now. So just the average patience level of the younger person is very different. And so, there are cultural shifts in that too. I remember one of the first times I went to Jamaica with friends, we could tell people who had the very American mentality of, they expected everything right now. The Jamaicans would be like, soon come, man, soon come. It's like,
cool runnings.
Like, it's coming, calm down. I used to always say, you don't go to a Jamaican restaurant when you're hungry. You go about 30 minutes to an hour before you're hungry, because it's going to be a minute. And so if you show up there when you're hungry, you're going to end up with an attitude.
Right.
Before the food gets there. But so just cultural shifts. I think that young people in general, their patience level is very different from these generations. But yeah, I think for me, that biggest, I guess, change or thing I would want them to experience is as I was saying, that kind of slowing things down, what that was like without some of that technology. So we've talked about a lot of things here, and there's a million things that we missed. There were things that we had on our long list of things, but it's so much. The 80s, you're talking about 10 years, 10 impactful years, 10 years of extreme growth and change for us, right? That was probably the most significant decade of our lives in terms of growth and change, right? We started out in 6th grade and we ended up as college graduates or close to by the time the 80s were over. So much change for us physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. We went through a lot of changes, a lot of growth. We came into the 80s as kids and left the 80s as men.
As adults.
Right.
So a lot of experiences. That's 3,650 days of time. A lot changed over that period and a lot of great experiences throughout that time. And we touched on a number of them today. We'd love to hear your comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love for you guys to type in there the things that really you loved about the 80s, that you miss about the 80s, and would like for us to maybe talk about again at some point in the future. But we appreciate you all so much. We appreciate you taking the time and spending the time with us. Please like, share, subscribe.
All that.
And, you know, all of the things so that y'all can catch us next time when we get back together and talk some more raw and refined topics. Thank you all and take care until next time. Peace.